Hello and welcome to this edition of Realm Talks 2. Today I'm joined by Amber Oakley, who is a solicitor at Evolve Family Law. Amber qualified as a solicitor in 2022 after first qualifying as a child legal executive. So it's her route into the profession that we're going to be having a little chat about today. So welcome, Amber, and thank you so much for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
I guess I just wanted to start off by asking, you didn't go down the usual training contract route into the legal profession. So could you just tell us a little bit more about your route into the law and why you chose CILEX rather than undertaking a training contract?
Yeah, so I decided I wanted to become a solicitor, and the first thing I did in terms of any sort of legal way into anything was to do a degree. I didn't do A-level law, so I had no idea about CILEX until 2022, actually, because it's not something they talk about at university. So I did my degrees, and then I did some work experience, quite a lot of work experience actually, as a paralegal. And then I decided that I wanted to qualify, and I started at Evolve Family Law in November 2022. And on my very first day, Louise, who I work with, said, "Have you thought about qualifying via CILEX? The amount of experience you've got looks like you could do qualification via CILEX." And it was kind of perfect for me, actually. So I'd not had anything in mind about training or qualifying really at university, apart from the end goal was to become a solicitor. I'd not really thought about the mechanics into it. Obviously, training contracts are incredibly difficult to get. There's a lot of competition for them. So the non-traditional route of CILEX, when I looked into it 3 years ago now, was a lot more attractive to me. It was the obvious choice for me based on the fact I'd got a lot of experience under my belt already, which meant I didn't have to do any of the CILEX learning. I was able to just jump straight in with the required elements for qualification.
Yeah, I think as you said, it wasn't something that you were aware about. I did law at university, and I feel like at university, I don't know whether it was just mine or, kind of across the board, but they really do sort of just mention LPC and training contracts in that route. And I too just wasn't
Yeah,
aware about the CILEX way of qualification. And I think it was either one lecturer that potentially just mentioned it in passing, or whether I came across it when I was looking online for, vacation schemes and things like that, that it came up. So yeah, it's I'm hoping that it's better known now, and I think doing things like this will obviously raise that awareness. But I think universities should definitely.
yeah. My husband said he knew about CILEX from his A-levels because he did A-level law, and he said it was mentioned as an
Right.
alternative route. But I know quite a few people who didn't do A-level law, so they also had no idea about it either.
Yeah.
And to quote a phrase that I've used before, I think CILEX is like the unsung hero of the legal profession, because it's something that not many people know about. It's still hard work, but it gets you qualified without the stress of a training
Yeah.
contract, because you can do it at your own pace.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's so competitive, as you say, to get a training contract. So absolutely. How does the training that you received via the CILEX route differ from that of somebody who would be doing a traditional training contract? Is it more tailored to family law?
Yeah, so my entire portfolio was based on the actual work I was doing in family law. So I did nothing else. My entire portfolio was purely on family law, mainly private children and finance, because that's the work that I do. So yeah, it was all family law. And the way I did it, because I'd got my undergraduate degrees, my masters, and my LPC, I didn't have to do any of the CILEX learning. So I didn't have to do any of their modules, which are akin, I believe, to the modules you do at university. So in order for me to qualify, I had to have my employment assessed, which meant they wanted to check that I was doing work of a wholly legal nature. And once they were satisfied with that, I was able to do a portfolio of work, which was based on the actual work I was doing. So,
Yeah.
yeah. everything was family on my portfolio.
Yeah. And I suppose it means then, in terms of, once you have qualified, that you naturally will go into family. Because I know when trainee solicitors, do seats, it's not always guaranteed that they can
Yeah.
either do the seats that they want or qualify where they want. Whereas, as you say, we're sticking with family and having it focused on what you enjoy and what you've done is great.
Yeah.
What other benefits do you think there are in terms of qualifying via CILEX?
So for me, it was not convenient, that's not the right word, but it was the best way to do it because I was working full time and I was able to do my CILEX on the side, so to speak. So I would finish my working day. I tend to work better at night anyway, so I'd finish my working day, go and have dinner, and then come back to my office and do the work I needed to do for CILEX, which was the portfolio and the qualifying employment application at the start. So there's a lot more flexibility, I think. It was shorter for me than doing a training contract, purely because of the amount of experience I'd already got. So I was able to count some of the work I'd done at previous employment towards the employment that they assessed. So all in all, it took me 18 months, just shy of, to qualify. And I know with a training contract, it's 2 years or 18 months. So it wasn't a huge amount less, but for me, it was brilliant that I could do it at my own pace.
So, how did your firm, Evolve Family Law, support you during that qualification process?
So I was really lucky that they were very supportive, as I've said, from day one. On my first day, Louise was saying, have you thought about this? This is something which we want to support you in, we want you to qualify. So have you considered it? I also feel quite fortunate that Robin and Louise are both very strong mentors. They're both very good at their respective fields of law. So Louise specialises predominantly in children matters and Robin does finance. So I had the ability to work with both of them. For my personal experience anyway, they would get me on board and I could then use that towards my portfolio. So yeah, they encouraged me to pursue and were very supportive from the start, and I feel incredibly grateful to have had that, because I know not many people would start a job and on that same day they're saying, we want you to go forwards and we want to help you with that.
Yeah.
It was really refreshing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's great. It's great. Obviously, you ultimately cross-qualified as a solicitor, which I mentioned earlier. So, what did that process actually involve?
That was quite straightforward once I'd become a legal executive. The SRA's website is really helpful on everything you need. But essentially, you have to have your LPC. Well, I needed my LPC because I'd already done that, so that exempted me from the CILEX learning, as I've mentioned. I then had to complete the professional skills course, which trainees have to complete their training contract, so that was the same. And then I just needed a letter of good standing from CILEX, which essentially says, you've not got any disciplinaries pending and you are a good candidate. And then you submit it all to the SRA, they look at it all, and then I remember it was a Friday afternoon, and I just got an email with my certificate saying you are now admitted to the role, and I was so excited because the fact it came on a Friday was just perfect, because then I could switch off at 5:00 and really feel proud of myself all weekend that I'd done something that had been on my bucket list for years, and I'd done it. It was all my work, and that end goal was done. It was a big tick off my list. So yeah, the SRA's website is brilliant at telling you exactly what you need, because it's not just the LPC, you can have other things as well, but obviously the LPC was relevant for me.
Yeah, it's like different scenarios, aren't there, I think. How long did it take between you qualifying as a chartered legal executive and cross-qualifying as a solicitor?
So I became a legal executive at the start of May 2022, and then I think it was the start of July I became a solicitor, so it was really short. I think if I didn't do my PSC until sort of the spring of 2022, and I was waiting for the results, so if I'd have done that earlier, I would probably have been able to do it, become a legal exec, wait a week or so and then put the application in, but I needed to do the PSC, and that's quite an intense course. So I needed to dedicate a week. I needed a week out of why it took me a little bit longer to get that done, because of work commitments, obviously.
Yeah, even then, I think it's shorter than I'd anticipated. The process being, and I had thought, perhaps it was a little bit more complicated, the process. So it's good to understand really that it's not that way.
Yeah, very very straightforward. And the SRA are really helpful if you've got any questions as well. They come back and say, I think they said it would be 10 weeks, and they came back just short of that. So they were really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. What advice would you give to law firms that might be considering taking on lawyers that want to qualify via the CILEX route?
So when I was on my PSC, there was quite a few legal executives doing it, and they'd said that they felt there was a bit of a stigma attached to being a legal executive that there isn't with being a solicitor. So I think my first piece of advice would be for law firms to look past that stigma, really. And I think if you're open to a chartered legal executive working in your department, it makes you look more inclusive, and it recognises that there are alternative ways of qualification that are just as valid. You still have to work just as hard, but it's the non-traditional route. And I think if you can look past that, then you open yourself up to a lot more candidates, because there's quite a few people. I was really surprised on my PSC at how many people were legal executives and were looking to cross-convert because they just felt the opportunities weren't the same for them as they were for solicitors. I also think it's great for employers because it's you've got that flexibility, and you can say to your staff we'll support you, or you can do it this way, but you do it in your own time. And then you've got someone who's working hard, but they know that they've got that step, I suppose, to look forward to of qualification. So Louise mentioned to me that one of the things that made CILEX qualification attractive to them was that you don't have to be an approved training provider like you do to offer a training contract. So long as there is a solicitor who's on the roll and is currently entitled to practice, they can be your supervisor. So I think from an employer's point of view, it's not quite as strenuous as going through the rigmarole, I believe, of becoming an approved training provider. You can simply be a solicitor and you can be a mentor to someone who wants to qualify via CILEX.
Yeah, definitely. Having built a successful career as a family lawyer who has gone down the CILEX route, what would you say to somebody who is considering doing the same thing?
Do it. Absolutely, just go for it. There is no reason why you can't juggle if you need to juggle. As I've mentioned, it's really flexible, so it's good for people who maybe have a family or existing commitments, because they can work in their work on CILEX around those other commitments. There's actually another colleague at work who is qualifying via CILEX, and she said that part of the attraction for her is that she can do it around her children and around her family life. She knows that, when the kids are in bed, she can do an hour on her portfolio or whatever it is she needs to work for. It's cheaper, I think, if you haven't got the LPC, I believe, and obviously I did have it, so I didn't have to do any CILEX learning. I think the modules are cheaper than doing your LPC. So if you're self-funding, it becomes a lot more attractive than, and I think you pay also module per module. So if you are doing the CILEX learning, you don't need to put up necessarily thousands of pounds at once. You can do it in little chunks as you do your modules. And again, you can do those at your own pace, because when I was at the admissions graduation day last October, there was people who had taken them quite a while to complete and get to that stage, because they'd done one module, then they'd had a couple of months off, say over summer, and then they'd gone back to it. So you can work it around your existing commitments, and you can do it however you want. And I think another big benefit is that you're not competing for a training contract. There's no direct competition when you apply for CILEX. You are doing your own learning, and you're doing it at your own pace. If you are, fortunate like I was to have an employer who supports you and to know there's a job for you at the end of it, absolutely amazing. But I genuinely think that CILEX, I don't think I'd be qualified without CILEX. So it means a lot to me, and I think not many people know about it, like you said as well. If people talk about it and they know, if they want to be a solicitor instead of a legal exec, they can cross-convert. But essentially, you've done the same thing, you're still qualified, and you've done it your way, in your time, how best suits you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm sure, that learning about your experience and journey into the profession will be really valuable for lots of budding lawyers watching, people at university, as we say, who may not have been told about CILEX at all. So again, thank you so much.